Okay, everybody. Well, welcome. This is like week 5 of our class, and just so you know, we have one more week after this, and by then you'll have the whole basics and foundations of mindfulness meditation. So we have some people who are obviously doing a movie today, and so I can handle it, and hopefully you can handle it as well. So today we're going to do a couple of things. I'm going to talk about the obstacles to mindfulness with all of you, as well as, and so this is going to give you a way to kind of frame what are the major issues that are going on with mindfulness meditation, okay? And so we just call these the obstacles. But before we begin and start doing the meditation, are there any questions about the instructions for meditation? Because you have the full instructions pretty much for doing mindfulness meditation. Any questions or any comments or concerns about what came up this week? Anything? So you're all pretty clear on how this works, right? So we're going to do a meditation now, and I just want to so we understand once more what's going on here. We're simply bringing our attention to the breath. And the reason why we're bringing our attention to the breath is because we're trying to bring our attention, we're training ourselves to bring it to the present moment, right? And since the breath is in the present moment, by bringing our attention to the breath, we are bringing our attention to the present moment. Then what we're going to do is just be relaxed and be okay with whatever experience we have right there, right? So we're not going to comment on it or criticize it or et cetera. Our attention naturally will start to wander away. It does for everybody. When it does, once we notice it's wandered away, we simply bring it back to the breath. And so that's pretty much the practice. But as you've all learned, that on time, sometimes it's difficult. Our attention gets wandered away, but it's difficult for us to bring it back to the breath. We might say this is challenging to keep our attention on the breath. When this happens, all you do is make whatever is challenging the object of meditation. And so the challenge could be, I'm thinking a whole lot, at which time now thinking becomes the object of meditation. Or you might say, I have a pain in my body, and that's making it hard for me to stay on the breath. So now the body becomes the object of meditation. Or, geez, I have all this sadness or impatience, or I'm annoyed or something like that. That becomes the object of meditation. And so when these things become the object of meditation, then all we do is use the techniques that we've talked about, right? So if it's an emotion, the first thing we do is bring it into our body. That's what we were taught, right? If I have an emotion, anxiety, what does anxiety feel like? Last week when we talked, if there's a lot of thinking going on, we just turn our attention and say, this is thinking. That's all. Just this is thinking. And then we look at the qualities of the thinking. And if the qualities of the thinking are revealed to have an emotion associated with it, then what we do is we turn our attention back to the emotion and go through it like that. Okay? So that's pretty much the instructions. And the rest of it is just practice. So why don't we'll do a little practice here, and then we'll set up then we'll go through and I'll explain to you the major obstacles, and if we have time, we'll do another meditation where we actually experience what these obstacles are, okay? So I'm going to predict what your obstacles are, okay? But it's no big deal. All right, so we'll just start by kind of taking a fresh posture, as we've been doing, and closing our eyes. Don't mind these people wandering around. This is always what happens when these things happen. So we're just simply going to close our eyes. And see if you can take a fresh posture by sitting up as straight as you can, given the seats that we're on. And bring your attention inside your body to kind of align your spine as best you can, kind of with the gravity of your body, so that the spine is not your body weight is not too far forward or too far back. You seem kind of like centered. Bring your shoulders back and down. And then what I like you to do is to just scan your body, starting at the top of your head, looking for any sources of tension that you might find, and then seeing if you can soften the tension as best you can. So start with the muscles in your face and around your forehead and eyes, the nose and the mouth. And anytime you find any tension there, just see if you can just relax it. You can do so with each out breath. Then bringing your attention to your chin, and then your neck, the shoulders, shoulder blades. Again, releasing any excess tension that's not necessary for sitting up. Down the arms, all the way to the hands and fingers. Through the torso, the belly, relaxing any tension that you have in the legs, knees, and all the way down to your feet. So that you should end up in a general posture that is awake and alert, present for your experiences right now, and yet relaxed and open and accepting at the same time. So then when you're ready, simply bringing your attention to the physical act of breathing through the physical sensations of the breath. Just watching the breath as you breathe in and breathe out, by watching the physical sensations, the rising of the belly, expansion and contraction of the chest, or just feeling the air going in and out of the nose. Just knowing when the breath is going in, knowing when the breath is going out. Again, your attention will wander away as it does. Once you notice it's wandered away, and then without any judgment or any commentary, just with a very relaxed mind, just simply return your attention back to the physical sensations of breathing in and breathing out. Again, remembering that if at any time you find it difficult to keep your attention on the breath because of a body sensation, emotion, or thinking going on, you can always make that the object of meditation. Say, this is thinking. This is sadness or impatience, or this is a body sensation. So again, some people like to make this very complicated, but really the idea here is very simple. Just think this is simple, very simple. Just being present for whatever our experience is, whether it's positive or negative or neutral. And then meeting this experience with a very relaxed mind. So some people, as they've been meditating for a few minutes, will tend to tense up their body. So one thing you can do in the middle of a meditation is just quickly scan your body from the top of your head down to your toes, just seeing if you've built up any tension. And if you find any tension, just see if you can soften and release that tension. And then bring your attention back to the breath. Okay, so now then just take a couple of deep breaths, and when you're ready, open your eyes. All right. All right, so any questions about that? All that we're doing is, again, I made the comment that a lot of people start to make this really complicated, and they want to kind of think about a lot of things and want to make this a whole big deal. And really, all you want to do is just keep reminding yourself, this is very simple. It's very simple. Right? It's just very simple. The other thing I just wanted to remind you once again of is that you don't realize this is what's happening. That you're sitting in meditation, as you're thinking and you're putting your attention on the thinking, etc. A lot of times what happens is you don't realize that you're tensing up your body again. So I find it really helpful to constantly, about once every 5-10 minutes or so, what I do is I just quickly kind of just say, okay, just look for tension in my body. It's not a big deal. It just takes a second. Oftentimes what I realize is that I've tensed up a part of my body. Sometimes it's just because thinking was going on. Even though I let go of the thinking, it was just around long enough to tense me up. And so I just relax. And from the reasons for that is that if your body is tense and you're trying to be relaxed at the same time, it's really hard. So you're just becoming mindful of the body. Okay? All right, so with that, I just want to talk today about kind of what are the main obstacles that people have with mindfulness. And so those of us who practice mindfulness, this becomes something that we become very expert at. And so in a sense, we become connoisseurs of those things that are essentially getting in the way of us being able to be mindful. And some of these are also related, just so that you know, to being able to get into deep concentration. So a lot of people that come to mindfulness say, geez, I'd really like to have a deep concentration, but these are the barriers, if you will, the things that stand in the way. And so there's 5 of them, and so I thought I'd go through these 5, and then as I'm doing so, you might reflect as I'm going through them, is this what your hindrance is, or your obstacle is? It's the thing that when you're in meditation, that you find oh yeah, this is where I get caught all the time. Okay? And so the first one is just what we just call desire. And desire shows up because we close our eyes and all of a sudden we find that our mind just kind of goes off and we start thinking about, it would be so great if we could just do something else. It'd be great if I could, get back and look at my iPhone so I could see who's friending me on, on Facebook or whatever, right? But it's usually just it goes into stories and kind of illusions and things like that about how things could be better. So it's a desire, okay? And so a lot of people, what happens is, you can see why it becomes an obstacle to get into meditation, because as they close their eyes, the first thing they know, when anything challenging comes up, they immediately just start fantasizing about something that would be much better. Okay, so that's the first obstacle. Okay, the second obstacle is almost like the flip side, and the flip side of that is like aversion. And the aversion could be people go into meditation and they have aversion towards themselves, so like themselves, or they have aversion towards, say, the situation that they're in. Say, my knee's hurting, I want that to go away, or there's sound outside, I want that to go away. And it's very aversion driven, right? It can actually be things that are outside of meditation. It can actually be ill will towards other people. So if you sit down and meditate and you're saying, that person really did me wrong, and all I'm going to do is sit in meditation, just think about that person and how bad that person is, etc., then all of a sudden what's going to happen is you won't be able to get into concentration. Okay? So these are 2 sides of the coin. Desire and aversion kind of keep people out of mindfulness. Okay? Now, just because I'm going to be talking about ways of dealing with some of these obstacles that we're talking about. So just so you know, usually when we're talking about desire or we're talking about aversion, we actually are talking about desire to some object, for some object, like I desire that object, or I'm aversive to that thing, right? So you have your mind, and then you have this object. Right? And so one way when you're dealing with these things is to just simply turn your attention right back onto yourself, and just say, instead of being concerned about what that object is, just say, what is the subjective experience of, say, that desire? Or what is the subjective experience of this aversion? So you really don't have to lose the desire or lose the aversion. What you need to do then is just become mindful of the fact that this is what the subjective experience is for having this desire and for having this aversion. Okay? And so the third one is something that is fatigue. And there's two types of fatigue. There's physical fatigue, and then there's mental fatigue. And some people, when they are faced with challenges, as and you might be one of these people, when they're faced with challenges, the way that they deal with that challenge is they immediately get tired. Right? That's a mental fatigue. You can see this with people because they might get really tired, but then if you take away the obstacle, here you take away whatever the situation is, the challenge that they all of a sudden have a lot of energy. So you probably all experience this. If mental fatigue is the way that you tend to deal with challenges, and what will happen is if you say, oh, I have to take this test tomorrow, etc., you're so tired and you're just exhausted. But if a friend calls you up and says, you want to go out and have dinner, you go, oh, I'm so happy, yeah, great. And all of a sudden you have all this energy. That's what we're calling, that's what we mean by mental fatigue. You can also have physical fatigue, right? Mental fatigue and physical fatigue, when you're trying to practice mindfulness, kicks you out of being mindful. That's what I'm saying, it's an obstacle. So it's very hard to actually have kind of a deep sense, and it's very hard to get into any kind of concentration, as you can imagine, if you're so tired. Right? So this is the reasons why when we start a mindfulness class, a lot of people at the very beginning will say, I close my eyes, and the first thing they talk about is how they start to fall asleep. Some of you said that on the very first day. That's an obstacle. And I knew it was an obstacle when you said it. And so when you become conscious of, okay, so this is an obstacle, the first thing, of course, is just to try to be mindful of it. Okay? So fatigue is a big one. So the fourth one is what we call restlessness and remorse. It's really restlessness, because you're just like, and so a lot of people have anxiety, this is the way they experience it, right? You have a challenge that happens, and what happens is the way that you react towards it is you immediately get kind of scattered and kind of like running around. This is the way that you kind of like handle things. For some people, what they do is they have remorse. Oh, I did that. That was a bad thing I did. And so they're kind of like thinking about something that they did before. And so this is an obstacle. So again, all of these are obstacles. And so what happens is you get into meditation and things come up, and the first thing you know, you start getting worried and restless, and this is kind of a challenge that you have. Then the fifth one is doubt. And doubt is exactly what it means. It's you sit down to meditate, and the first thing you think about is this really right for me? Maybe I should be doing another kind of practice. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this mindfulness stuff. I heard about feng shui. I should rearranging my bedroom and make it more kind of, or maybe I should be going to a juice bar. And so what you're doing is you found yourself in a kind of a very kind of confused state. That's what doubt does. And when you have doubt, you immediately are kicked out of mindfulness. All right? So there's 5 of them. So let me just recount them, and then I want to hear from you, which is there's desire. Again, desire usually materializes in terms of when you're faced with a challenge, your natural tendency, this is a mind's tendency, is just to meet the challenge and then immediately start going off into, I sure wish the world would be this other sort of way. The other side of that is you meet the challenge, and the first reaction to the challenge is aversion. Oh, I wish this would go away. I don't want this, etc. So you're kind of pushing things away. The third way is that you kind of like meet the challenge, and the first thing you do is get tired. Right? And the fourth way is that the challenge comes up, and you immediately go, oh my God, what's going on? I don't know how to handle this, and you start running around, etc. And the fifth thing is that you hit the challenge and you just go, I'm not sure this is right for me. I just don't know. Seems like there's a lot of questions here. I have a lot of confusion that I have to resolve. All right? Does it make sense to all of you? All right. So now I want to hear from you. Are any of this, as I was going through those, did any one of those seem like the way that you typically kind of meet challenges? Like the way your mind, so think of this is the way your mind kind of like deals with challenges. What?
Yes.
Like which one?
Well, like all of them at different times.
Right, so.
Like in particular with meditation, like desire, like ability.
Right.
Probably more recently, but like if I have a bunch of work to do, the first thing I do is feel like I should go to sleep.
Right.
Like,
Right.
all of those things apply to me. Or like I've had times where I'm doing like a body scan meditation, I'm like, no, I should be doing like Vipassana meditation or whatever, it's just like.
That's right.
Yeah.
So these are all of these things, and so you can see like you're doing the body scan meditation, and you're thinking I should be doing a breath meditation, and so what you're doing is you just set up doubt. So you won't get into deep concentration at all. All right. Anybody else? Typical way. These are typical ways that our mind tends to work. Okay.
Yeah, I noticed myself yawning during the meditation and just any challenges.
Right.
As I approach that, I just start to get tired.
And so do you see this? Because some people will say that this is not only something that happens in meditation, but it also happens like when we're walking around. And it's kind of like a general thing of the way that we kind of like handle challenges in our life. Right? Anybody else? Next. Yes.
I would say the fourth one is probably my most like
Kind of like restlessness and kind of
restlessness.
remorse.
It's like when I'm meditating, when my mind wanders,
Right.
I think of all the things I could be doing. It's like
Right.
I almost have a notepad right there,
Yeah.
so I can like write it down. Like, oh, I need to remember this.
Yeah.
30 minutes or something.
Yeah, yeah. And so this happens in meditation as well, right? And so, but it happens in the when you're like in the world. When I say, so in a lot of ways, these are just again things that are going on in the world. And you can see I'm asking you these things because I'm saying that people who practice mindfulness, we become connoisseurs of these things. Nobody, when we, it's not something to be hiding and saying, oh, I don't want to tell people this. You just say, this is my obstacle. Because once you like know it's your obstacle, then you can kind of like do something about it. Anybody over here? Yes.
I think I'll fall into restlessness and remorse.
Right.
I'll always like think about like things that I can be doing, or like I'll think about like something like that's like in the meditation, and
Right.
I'll be like, oh, like I could talk about it like in class, or like
Right.
something comes up and like I'll think about like past experiences and stuff.
Right. Okay. Great. Anybody else? Yes.
I'd also say desire was one of those things, and maybe a little remorse
Right.
as well. Definitely a mixture of everything you said, but the desire, like, just my mind feels free, and it's like, oh, I should be doing this, or like,
Right.
I made that mistake in the past, and
Right.
it just like goes wild, and I try and rein it back in.
Okay. Great. So all of these, again, yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When, like, I feel like my obstacle is that I don't realize that I'm distracted until, like,
Right.
I'm into, like, I'll start thinking of a scenario or remembering something, and then I'll realize it, and I just feel like I dragged it on for so long.
Right.
So I don't know what obstacle that goes under, but
Well, again, it kind of depends on like what the story is. If you look at it and you say, "Oh, I was on this story, I was on this fantasy of like things that I could be doing, etc." As compared to like where you're saying, "Oh, this fantasy is about pushing away and being aversive to what's going on right now," right? And so, but that's okay. This is a very everything I'm talking about is a very natural part of the process of doing mindfulness. So then the question becomes, are these obstacles? They're only obstacles when people aren't, when we're not conscious of it, right? So everything I'm talking about becomes an obstacle because of the fact that you're not mindful of it. But the more you practice mindfulness, the more you'll be able to see that these are in fact the obstacles. And when you're mindful of these obstacles, they're not obstacles anymore. They're just part of what mindfulness is, right? And so I'll give you a kind of a personal experience. For me, when I set up to do meditation, I tend to immediately be aversive to back pain. Right? That's immediately where I go. That's immediately where I go. I don't go to desire. I'm not desiring. I'm not going off in there. And it's just a kind of a tendency that my mind has. Right? So I become a connoisseur of that. I go, oh, okay, there we go. So what I do is I really place my attention on the fact that this is an obstacle, and I become very mindful of it. Become very mindful of it. So much so that when I actually go into meditation, what I typically do is start the meditation by looking very carefully at when any back pain is about to begin. Because I want to see the beginning of it. Because I'm trying to be mindful of it. And in so doing, I can just be mindful of it, I can let it go, and that allows me what goes into deep concentration. Okay? So the job here is not to just go, oh, these are bad things, and I can't have these things, and all of that. That's what most people immediately go, is they say, oh, I can't have this, and this, and this, and this. These are just natural tendencies of the mind, of the way your mind processes these things. And so what all you need to do is just become mindful of them. Okay? Okay. So how do you do that? Well, it's in the same way that we've been saying. If it's a desire, like a desire that you brought up, the first thing to do is not to say, make the desire go away. The first thing to do is to say, what is the subjective experience? What is the subjective experience I'm having right now of having this desire? What does it feel like? Right? And if somebody is aversive, for example, then the thing is, you just, because it's a thing, it's your mind, you have a subjective experience, and your mind is on an object, right? It's on an object. And what you're going to do then is to take the object that you're on, and instead of focusing your attention on the object, which is usually where we get consumed in the object of our desire, right? Or I don't want that. It's about, I don't want that object over there. What instead we're doing is we're saying, okay, I don't want that object over there, but what's the subjective experience I'm having right now with having this kind of aversion to this experience? And then being present for that. Okay? Does this make sense to all of you? This, in fact, is the kind of the road to to being more not only mindful, but if you can identify what these major obstacles are, and you can just be, in meditation, you can say, okay, this is my main obstacle. This is the reason why we're talking about this today. You say, this is my main obstacle. And then just really, like when that obstacle shows up, just say, there's a lot of things I'm going to be mindful of, but boy, this one obstacle, this is something I'm going to be really mindful of. That is the path to greater concentration. That is the way you get concentration. In fact, you all know this, so I'll give you an example. Have you ever gone to the movies where you've watched a great movie and you've just been completely consumed in it? You've all done this, right? So you're sitting there in the movie, and it's just like an amazing experience. You're just totally lost in it, and all of a sudden you go, oh, God, I wish I had some popcorn. Right? Gone. Your concentration is gone. Right? You're wandering off. Or you sit there in the movie and you go, I should have gone to a different movie. There's a different movie that's playing here. Why I made such a bad decision, right? Or you're sitting in the movie and all of a sudden you start getting restless, and you start getting jittery, and you start thinking about bad things that you did before. I didn't lock the door to the house, and I didn't say goodbye to my cat, or whatever, right? And so now you're gone out of the movie, right? Or you're sitting there and you just start you're kind of like falling asleep, right? Every one of these things that I'm talking about, you lose concentration in the movie, right? So in a sense, what I'm doing here is I'm highlighting for you something that you already know. You know how to get into deep concentration. You already do. It's already part of your abilities right here. But what keeps you from deep concentration are these obstacles. Okay? All right. So are there any questions about this? Any questions at all? Okay. Okay, so here's the plan. The plan is that next week we're going to have our final class on mindfulness, and we're going to be talking about kind of an allied form of meditation that is really good for strong emotions, and it's actually an important part of how you start having more compassion for other people. And it's an important part of the training of mindfulness. So it actually goes hand in glove with what we've been doing. Okay? And so with that, have a good week, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Thank you all.